Hi, I'm Rod Scheida with Lincoln Traps, and we are standing here in front of a Lincoln rabbit trap. We call it a rabbit trap, but it actually does so much more. So you can not only throw rabbit targets, you can throw rabbit targets right side up, you can throw rabbit targets upside down. But with simply a change of an arm and a few small adjustments, we can throw standard birds as well. We also offer this machine in a 90mm version. Typically that is just going to be a dome MIDI target. Some parts of the world do have 90mm rabbits available, and if you do, that would also work with this machine. I want to talk a little bit about the arms, launch arms that you will get with the machine, and then also some other options. The narrow arm with this bend is what you're going to use for your standard target, standard dome target. The straight, heavier arm that's wider is what we're going to use with the rabbit target. And we'll get into more detail of that as we go. I'm going to show you changing the arms, going to show some other adjustments, but those are the two arms that would come with the machine. The optional arms that we have are what we call high angle arms. So there is plenty of adjustment in the machine, but if you have a need for a very high angle, you'll see the difference in these arms. One has more of a higher degree of angle of bend to it. That will give you a higher angle target, and again we'll get into more of that as we throw some targets. And that same feature is available in the rabbit. Not sure if you can see that, but one is straight, one has a bend. So those are the two that would be for rabbit targets, and again those are the wide, heavier arms. So we have the standard arm currently installed, throwing standard targets. So we'll throw a few, and I'll show you the adjustments. Now that's getting at the peak of the arc, probably about 30 feet off the ground. If that's not high enough for you, and I'm using an impact here just to speed things up, but use a wrench. But these are the full range of motion. I'll stop somewhere. The elevation just slightly. Actually, let's go ahead and raise it all the way. I'm going to show you the height, which you can achieve still with a standard target, a standard arm. Still not quite high enough for you. Now is when you would install what we call the high angle arm, which will get you even higher. The other thing you could do to get a little more height at this point would be easy enough to just go ahead and add some more spring tension to it, which will give you additional speed, but it's also going to give you additional height as well. We now currently have the high angle standard arm on. That means standard, I'm referring to a standard dome target, and this would be the high angle where it has more of a degree of bend for throwing that high angle all but to a teal presentation. Earlier I mentioned about that we make this similar model in a 90 or a MIDI machine. If you need a true vertical teal, the MIDI is a great option for that. But we'll go ahead and just launch a few targets. So that's throwing a basic Chandelle. I'm going to go ahead and just use an impact here for convenience. I'll lay the machine back. And you can go anywhere in between here and actually stop for any adjustment you want. We'll tighten her down there, and we'll throw some teal. Just showed you that we were throwing standard targets using the standard arm, but we can now throw rabbit targets. We can throw rabbit targets either right side up or upside down, depending on the presentation that you are looking for. And the only thing we have to do is we're going to install the rabbit arm. It'll be the wider, heavier duty arm is what we use for a rabbit target. So we're going to go ahead and take these targets out, install rabbit targets, and then we'll get a little more into the details of some of the small adjustments. So we're going to install the rabbit arm. All that's required is one 5/32 Allen wrench. So we're going to remove these two bolts here that are holding the standard arm currently. And you will notice that the arm is countersunk on one side. So they are flathead screws. We're going to reuse that same hardware. We'll set the standard arm to the side. So remember, we're installing the wide, heavier arm, and this will be for rabbit targets. So I will go ahead and secure this hardware, and we'll be ready to throw rabbits shortly. So we installed the rabbit launch arm. One of the other adjustments that you'll have to make is adjusting what we call the knife or a separator. It just barely goes between the bottom target, the number 1 target, and the second number 2 target, and helps separate that target. I'm going to turn this magazine manually, and I'm going slowly so you can see how this knife is going to engage into the target, and it peeled that bottom bird off, and the retaining wheel is holding the rest of the stack. So that is one of the other adjustments you will have to make. Now, the knife will have to be adjusted if you're throwing the target colored side up or right side up or upside down, and I can show you that we'll throw some with the colored side up, and we'll adjust the knife, and I'll show you both adjustments. We now have the rabbit arm installed, and we adjusted the knife accordingly to throwing a target with the colored side up or right side up. The other adjustment we'll have to make is what's called a brush adjustment, and the reason for that is if you see, a rabbit target is much thinner than a dome target. So previously that brush was set to allow a dome target to fall into position, but we need to tighten that gap up because now it's too loose for a rabbit target. So that is simply done by loosening this wing nut and turning in this thumb screw to the point that you want it to hold the target against the launch plate. You don't want it overly tightened, but you don't want it loose. You want it just like that the bird is being held against the launch plate. The other thing, when you are making these adjustments, just look at the condition of the brushes. The brushes and the weed whacker line, that is actually what holds the bird into position. So it should just push in and have a little bit of resistance. Now I'm dropping this in manually just to check it, but now that we know that we're pretty close with adjustment, we can go ahead and actually just physically turn the magazine and it drops right in. That's exactly what we're looking for. So we installed a rabbit arm, we adjusted the knife, and we adjusted the brush. So I've now secured that. So arm, knife, brush, and that's the only change that we needed to do to go from one target to the other than swapping out targets. And we are now throwing rabbit targets with a machine that we just a few minutes ago were throwing standard targets out. saw some rabbit targets being launched, and there is some adjustments for elevation, and this is the same as what we did on standard target. You can lay this back and adjust to whatever height you want for your rabbit target. If you get to a point where you want to go much higher, that would be where the what we call the high angle rabbit arm comes into play. If you look at the arm that's on here now, you'll see that it's straight. The high angle arm has a higher degree of bend into it, and that will actually throw the rabbit much higher. So if you do have a need for a high in the air rabbit, I would recommend installing this. Otherwise, just stay with the standard arm. Right now, we currently have all the targets loaded right side up. So when the target feeds, you're going to see that orange to the shooter. If for some reason visibility is an issue, you need to see black, it's very simple to change. It's simply going to flip all the targets over in the machine, and then we're going to make a knife adjustment. And I got targets switch over, I'll show you the knife adjustment. So now that we've flipped all the targets over, if we wouldn't adjust that knife, we're going to see that that knife is going to come in and it's going to chip. It's going to come in and chip that bird right like that. And that's not what we want in this situation. We want that knife to go directly between the two targets and separate them. So what we're going to do is use 2 wrenches here. We're going to use a 5/8 on the knife itself just to stabilize it and hold it. And there's a smaller nut on the underside. We're actually going to turn that all the way down for this one, for what we're going to adjust. And run the top nut all the way down. Square up the knife. And we're just using this 5/8 to hold the knife so it doesn't spin, and tighten the 7/16 on top. Now that we turn it, we're going to see it go right between the targets. So it's just separating the target, it's not chipping anything, and that bottom bird just fell right off. And that's exactly how it should function. Let me do one more, just to double check that adjustment. And that's going right between the targets, no chipping, and the target is laying right on there. That's exactly how you want the knife adjusted. Let's just say hypothetically we rolled the machine to a new spot. This is one of the calls we get from users so it's a little troubleshooting is where I'm going with this. We rely on gravity for that rabbit target to feed down that ramp. So if you look right now, the machine is positioned, the machine is leaning away. It's not plumb, it's leaning away from the feed ramp. So we have an adjustment for that. But the cause of what's going to happen here is when the bird goes to feed, because we rely on gravity, the bird doesn't want to drop all the way down. It may hang up here at this point. And while I'm here, I just want to show you, if a machine is indexing properly, the edge of this extrusion should stop here at the edge of that feed opening in the stainless plate. So again, the edge of this extrusion should be at the edge of the hole of that opening. But what I want to show you is here, that bird didn't drop. That bird did not drop, and that's mainly because we have too much tilt in the machine. So to solve that problem, there is a slot right here in the front of the red base. I'm going to go around to this side of the machine. I'm going to loosen that bolt, and I'm going to push it towards the feed ramp. Let me step back and see if that looks plumb. Yeah, I think we look pretty good there. So let me go ahead and secure that. And that again is 3/4 inch. So now I'm just going to turn it manually. Now the bird drops right down. Much faster feeding, and that's really what you are looking for. You don't want that bird to hang up at the top. One other thing that will actually improve that feeding and part of your maintenance should be, we use a product called Q-Max Black Diamond. And if you simply spray that onto the ramp, you don't want to spray it on and leave it wet. You want to spray it on and then wipe that off, buff it dry, and that will help repel dirt, dust, water, rain, and you'll see a big improvement in the feeding. In fact, you can see all the dirt that I got off of there just from target debris, and that's normal. But now when we feed that target, so much faster. I don't know if you can see that, but it actually was coming down much faster than it was previously just by cleaning that ramp. So I highly recommend using the Q-Max Black Diamond. That also works great for all the small pivot points on the machine. It's an excellent lubricant, but for cleaning the feed ramp, highly recommend using the Black Diamond. We've gone back to a standard dome target, which just basically took the amount of time to swap out the birds. We did install the standard launch arm and adjusted the knife accordingly depending on how your rabbit target was set. So the standard targets, the knife is now set for standard targets. The one thing that we did not adjust is the brush. So I want to show you what will happen if you do not adjust the brush. And again, I'm just going to turn this manually. So I'm turning it manually. You're going to see the knife engage, drop that bird. But see how the bird didn't drop really down in? We want the bird to be down in farther. That's because this pocket was closed. The brush was set for a rabbit. So you're going to see as I back this out, now that opened up that pocket, and that standard bird was it allowed the standard bird to slide down in. Let me do that another time. And again, I'm just turning it manually so you can see what's happening here. Now you can see that that bird is down in that pocket. That's where you want it. You don't want the bird stopping way up here like that. It should stop and drop down into that target pocket. So these are all things you can do without running the machine. I'm just simply turning the magazine. The one thing you want to do is when you do turn the magazine, you always want to stop with this raised ridge of the extrusion at the edge of the launch plate. You don't want to stop with it halfway over or go past. You want to stop it right when it drops the bird. That's where this should be in line with this opening for the target. That's where you want to check your alignment.